I'm Michael Dagg. In case you didn't know that, I want to thank you all for being here today for this picnic and for the things that we're going to be sharing together. I'd like to invite us to begin with a time of prayer. Thank you, God, for this day, for this congregation of faithful people, both gathered here and some who are probably with us online. Thank you for the food that has been prepared for us, mostly by Leslie Sarah. Planning and most of the preparation has been done by her, along with some helpers. So thank you for all of that work. We'll be joined in a bit by our speaker, Gabby Trejo, and we thank you for her and for the work that Sacramento Area Congregations Together does under her leadership. Bless us, Lord, and keep us in your care and help us to make the most of our time together. Amen. So I'm one of the members of the discipleship team, and the others are Trent Sirkovich and Margie Miller and Leslie Sarah. And Trent is going to start us off by sharing a little bit about the point of being here today. So come on over, Trent.
How's everyone doing? So as Michael said, my name is Trent Starcevich, and I'm a member of the discipleship team. And you might be asking why you're currently sitting out here on the lawn at a picnic, when in the years past there was usually an auction or some sort of large event to generate money for the church. And this is just another way in which we're adapting to a current time that is always changing. Whether that is an online presence that requires cameras and technical know-how that we didn't have in the past, to socially distanced picnics outside. And if you're tuning in, well, welcome. To cut straight to the chase, though, over the next month and a half, we're going to be asking you for money pretty frequently, as we started off when we handed you a sandwich that was topped with a pledge form. You'll be seeing those frequently, and we'll be having members share why Parkside is so important to them. The truth is, the pledge drive is a vital ingredient to our church's future. It's a way that we can create some stability by having a sense of how much money we can count on coming in next year and plan around that. It's absolutely vital to our future. So it's really going to be more of a conversation, which has kind of been a theme lately, a conversation amongst each other and a conversation with ourselves about what Parkside means to us. What is it that we value about Parkside, and how does that stack up with our checkbook? So we appreciate every single one of you. Bonnie was one of the first people that we called when Susan got home with Evelyn, just to check in while I went to work for the first time. And that's one reason why we pledge, is how much Parkside means to us. And so let me introduce Michael Dagg.
Well, hello again. As I said a little bit ago, I introduced the members of the discipleship team. The discipleship ministry team is a new team created when the congregation adopted new bylaws last June. Now, Rajiv, are you there? Where you are? Wave. Okay, back in the back there. I think Rajiv would actually prefer us to say we're the team leads, because there might be other people who are part of the team, but we don't have them in place yet. And the other piece of that is that each team has a council liaison. Some of you know that. And Margie is our council liaison, which means she attends our team and council, and she's probably part of the justice team too. Why not, Margie, right? So the new bylaws will tell you that the discipleship team is comprised of at least 2, but not more than 4 members elected by the congregations, the pastor, and a council liaison. But here's the key part of what the bylaws say. This team will engage Parksiders in the life and work of the church, including, but not limited to, stewardship and volunteerism. So we're here today to have a great time together and to engage Parksiders in thinking about stewardship, which Margie will say more about a little bit later. And then there's the other major part of our charge, to engage the congregation in thinking about volunteerism. And in previous years, in previous versions of the annual pledge drive, you may remember being asked to check off in a box or a circle or something, ways that you'd be willing to volunteer your time in the life of the church. And unfortunately, you may also remember never hearing from anybody about the things that you expressed interest in doing. We aim to change that because we believe that your contributions of time and talent are a very important part of what makes the church's ministry possible and effective. But we need some time to work on it. So in the meantime, our commitment, the discipleship team's commitment to you, is that in the new year, the team will develop resources to help members and friends of the church connect with volunteer opportunities at Parkside. And we'll get back to you about that. So, Gabby Trejo is in the house. Welcome to you. She is our special guest and speaker today. She's the executive director of Sacramento Area Congregations Together. SAC-ACT, as it is often shorthand called, is an interfaith group working for justice in the Sacramento area and beyond through community organizing. And as you may know, that they have recently moved their offices to here at Parkside just a few months ago. Some of you already know Gabby, and I'm sure the rest of you will enjoy meeting and hearing from her today. But first, I want to give you a little background information that may be new to most of us. Gabby was born in Tijuana, Mexico, and moved to Escondido, California, near San Diego when she was 10. After college, she worked with mothers who lost children to gun violence at an organization called Women Against Gun Violence in Los Angeles. In that role, she also taught young men and women at Homeboy Industries, which some of you may have heard of, to how to share their testimonies in schools. Another organization called Lupus LA, she worked with patients diagnosed with lupus who were mostly uninsured women of color. Feeling the need to do more, she discovered faith-based community organizing and has been inspired by the great work of the faith community. Working at SAC-ACT, Gabby says, has brought her closer to God in ways she never expected. And speaking personally, I hope we'll hear more about that today. Gabby began at SAC-ACT as an organizer in 2013 and has worked on issues including immigration, homelessness, healthcare, housing, environmental justice, and economic development. She's been an executive director of SAC-ACT for 4 years. Please welcome Gabby Trejo.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Lamaya. It's so nice to see so many beautiful faces and in person, behind the screen. That has been the toughest part about being in this pandemic. First, I want to say thank you to the Parkside family for welcoming our staff at ACT. When we were looking at where do we want to like be, and what's going to be our new office. And one of the things we talked about is like, what is the spirit in which we want to invite new people that engage at ACT? Like, what do we want them to experience? And it was really important to staff and our board members that new members would feel welcome. And every time that we drive by Parkside, you guys always have a very welcoming sign. And so I just want to say that it's more than the sign, but the sign, every time that I heard stories about how many times your signs have been vandalized and how you all consistently come back and say, like, these are our values. This is what it means for us as a church family to care for others. That is the kind of tenacity and love for others that keeps me in this work. And when I think about who we are at Sacramento ACT, we want to continue that that spirit with all our other congregations. So just thank you so much for welcoming us into your community. And I wish I had keys, but if I can get keys from someone here, I'm happy to show you our office, because we made it our home and we have become more environmentally friendly and have become, I used to like hold on to a lot of paper, and my staff are like, Gabby, we just are going to be virtual. Everything you need to scan. So anyway, I'm very proud of our office. As Pastor Michael mentioned, I was born in Mexico, and it's really important for me to always start with that, because the way I see the world is through the lens as an immigrant woman. And I was raised Catholic. I'm still Catholic, but I was raised in I wasn't raised in the church. It was kind of like we just went to church when there was a baptism, when there's a quinceañera or a wedding. So I was kind of like I was just kind of like looking into the church, and I never fully understood what it could look like for me to fully like experience God in ways where it was beyond just, like prayer, but actually with people. And so I must say that when I saw the job posting 9 years ago that Sacramento ACT was hiring an organizer, I was like, I'm Catholic. I can do this, right? No, I did not have any idea of what that meant. And so I took on the position thinking I could do this, and thinking that I can contribute to the work that Sacramento ACT was doing at the time around immigration in 2013. And yeah, there was something I could contribute, but if I must be honest, 9 years later, as we still continue our immigration fight to this moment, is that I have gained more from Sacramento ACT, something that I can never repay the organization or any of you that I have had the pleasure to work with, because I have, in my time that I discovered faith-based organizing, I discovered that it's more than just a job. Anyone can just do a job, right? But that it really is a calling. And it's, for me personally, it's a way in which I get to live my faith in a very active way. And it's a way in which I truly believe that one day when God asks me, where is your brother? I want to be able to answer that. I want to be able to say, I did my best and I tried to be with people. And sometimes that means pushing from the back, and sometimes that meant leading from the front, but always being in community. And honestly, faith-based organizing has taught me that I can, that my faith goes beyond just the four walls of the church, and that my faith can be not just as my identity as a Catholic woman, but as my identity as a woman of faith, and how I am with all of you. And so to me, that is the biggest part about being with Sacramento ACT. And for those of you that don't know who Sacramento ACT is, or does anybody have no idea who Sacramento ACT is? Because I think you're all pretty well versed. Más o menos. Okay, good. So Sacramento ACT, just to give you a really short summary, we've been in the community for the last 30 years. We just celebrated 30 years this past April. So thank you all for who joined our virtual event. And we got started by a Catholic priest in Oakland, Father Bauman, who's still very active in the community. And we started with what we call Federation, a sister organization in Oakland. And then from there, we kind of just grew and have 12 sister organizations across the state. We have Federation sister organizations in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Florida, Hawaii, New York, like we're across the country, and we're organizing with internationally too. So we do faith-based organizing in Haiti and also in Rwanda and El Salvador. So it's kind of like, while our work at ACT is very local, right? We try to address issues around between like homelessness, housing, education, police accountability, is that we are part of a state and national organization. So a lot of the advocacy that we did together to win driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, we did that wearing our state hat, which is Pico, California. And when we were fighting for healthcare coverage around the Affordable Care Act, we did that wearing our Faith in Action National hat in DC. And so, our bulk of work is very driven by what leaders, right, what members of the community like yourselves tell us you want to organize on. So right now we have 6 different issue campaigns. We have Lamaya, who's very active in our education committee. They have been fighting the school district to really ensure that the district is taking mental health as a priority for our students, that our students are resourced. And so they most recently ended a multi-million-dollar contract with the police department and the school district, because we ended up finding out that a lot of our schools that are Title I, low-income schools were having more officers and didn't have actual nurses. We, as the community, feel like that's a big problem, right? And so addressing that fight took 3 years, right? Yeah. Other organizations had been working a lot longer on that, but we were finally able to get commitment from the school district that they wouldn't renew that contract, and that they would invest in nurses and mental health services. Most recently, you probably heard in the news around Aggie Square, which is an expansion of UC Davis here in the Oak Park area. It's a multi-million-dollar project, and as a collective Sacramento ACT with other partners, we were able to negotiate a community benefits agreement that I must say, sitting in that table made me feel really nervous, because we're we want this project to be successful, and we want people in our communities to get the jobs. And, I've never worked for a union or never been an attorney. So, negotiating, it's difficult, especially because the way I was raised, in my family is like everybody plays nice, and you don't want to make anybody upset. But it was I'm just happy to report that this year we were able to get commitment from UC Davis, the city of Sacramento, to invest not just $5 million in affordable housing, $50 million for affordable housing that just in the Oak Park, Tahoe Park neighborhood. And $5 million of those 50 will be used for displacement, to address displacement in the community, and that 20% of the jobs in the Aggie Square project will go to people living in some of the poorest zip codes in the community. There's funding that's going to go to transportation. And while we didn't win everything that we wanted, I must say that my proudest moment is that we were able to get the city council to commit to having a future ordinance that commits the city, any future city project will have a community benefits agreement attached to it. So, that's a huge win, because we spend most of the time fighting to even get agreements. So, that completely changes the way that we think about redevelopment in the community. And as we think about displacement, right, we keep on hearing this like gentrification. How do we balance gentrification, investment in communities without displacing people? And so we want to make sure that that we are putting equity at the center of how the city is thinking about it, and how development is thinking about it, and how unions are thinking about it. And so that I must just say that is the biggest win that we've ever had, because while Sacramento Act was involved in the Kings Arena, and I don't want to look at your faces to see how you feel about the Kings Arena, but we fought really hard to try to get a community benefits agreement. But while we did win something, it was not nearly as much as what we were able to get out of the Aggie Square. And that win could not be possible without our congregations like yourself, who credential yourselves as Sacramento Act, because in some ways it is, I feel like at ACT, all our congregations, we kind of share power, right? We kind of have a little piggy bank, and we all put our own power as individual institutions, that when we have big fights like Aggie Square, we get to borrow. And that is what allows us to say, that we are relevant in this moment, that the faith community has a role. And some people want to say, well, that's politics. It's not politics when you're talking about real people that are our neighbors, that are people that are in our congregations. And so we have actually a meeting with the mayor and Vice Mayor Jay Schneer that we're hosting here at your church to come and talk to our clergy about what Aggie Square actually means for our communities. So I guess, and there's a whole list of wins that I can share with you all that could not have been accomplished without each and every one of you. So if you ever got a call, or if Lamaya and other folks here ever asked you to come to a phone bank, or will you canvass, or will you at least sign this petition, know that it makes a difference. It makes a difference. We have data that shows that in the last 9 years, any kind of issue or ballot initiative that we put in front of people, voters, especially low propensity voters, that they have most likely voted in favor of what we put in front of them. And so when we say low propensity voters, we know that, we do nonpartisan work and we don't endorse candidates, but at the end of the day, like it is through ballot initiatives, it is through local ordinances that we are able to create systems change. And so I'm just very proud to be a partner with you all at Parkside. And I'll stop there in case there are any questions, or if Pastor Rajiv or Pastor Michael, you want me to expand on anything else? No? Questions? Yes. Yes, the questions around what does it mean that funding for displacement? So right now we are in the process with the city of drafting how will people access that funding and what it would, what the teeth of it all will look like. But in our agreement, that funding can be used for rental assistance, attorneys, right? And part of it is because, as you know, COVID has not just impacted us because of the health and the fact that so many lives have been taken from our community due to this pandemic, but economically, folks have not been able to recover and pay their mortgages or their rents. And so now that the state moratorium has ended, we want to make sure that folks are able to access that funding as much as possible, so it can help people cover their rent, or if they're in the middle of a litigation with their landlord, or if they're trying to save their home, that they could use some of that funding for that. The funding is not available yet, and so we're hoping that we can make it accessible before the end of the year, but I have no idea if that will happen. But yeah, it's a good question. Oh, yes. Yeah, so we have an event with the mayor and clergy from Sacramento Act and the trades to really share with our clergy so there's a lot of confusion about Aggie Square and like what did community actually get. And so we're having a roundtable with clergy and the elected officials to share both what was in the agreement and the commitment of what future development can look like and the role of the faith community in advocating for some of this funding. Because 20% of the jobs will go to folks living in the surrounding neighborhood. We have invited the trades to come and talk about their apprenticeship program and how can people in our congregations access those jobs. And so really our goal is to inform clergy as much as possible so that they can let their congregation know how to access some of the resources if they live in the neighborhood. Thank you. That's a great question. Any other questions? Yes. It's an expansion of UC Davis. It's both private and public funding, mostly private. Over 51% is private funding. And they are going to be, I mean, if you imagine, what is it, on Stockton Boulevard and I think it's First, they'll expand in a really small area. I forgot how big it is, but they're going to be building, their buildings will include housing, student housing, and then they'll have office space that will be rented out for other, businesses. And they'll have a community center. So it's really to expand their UC Davis campus on the hospital. But the units, they're building 250 units. Those are just for students or faculty. And so that's why we had to fight to get the $50 million so that there is, other affordable housing in the area. But we engage in deep listening for over 2 years. And residents, number one, if you live in Tahoe Park or Oak Park or Elmhurst even, number one concern was housing, followed by transportation, really what is that going to do to traffic, right? And how do we mitigate that? And then the other part was jobs, right? How do we make sure that the jobs stay with Sacramentans and they're not, because it's a private developer, that the workforce wouldn't come from out of state or out of town. So, yes, Lamaya.
Talk about a spiritual journey, and I have to say that really challenged me, and what Rodriguez said was responding to questions about how do you know what you know, whatever the question was, how do you know what you think you know, whatever. I really lived that through SAC Act because through my involvement with SAC Act, what I knew was truth, there was no question. I found out it was totally wrong and a lie. And I found out crap about myself that I did not like. And I still listen crap about myself I don't like. But it really invites you into space, at least for me, spaces I would not have been in by myself. It's really, the trainings are incredibly supportive and challenging and uncomfortable, but really it's an incredible journey and an incredible opportunity to inspire you.
Thank you, Lamaya. I'm still, I still wrestle with how we learn. It's not even about campaigns. So people may come because they have an interest in climate change, right? But at the end of the day, it's not really about addressing climate change. Although we want to win, obviously, I like winning too. But it's about can we have a transformation about what is our role as people of faith, right? And my mom to this day doesn't even know what I do. She's like, so you evangelize people? Or I'm like, well, not really, kind of, I guess, if people want to get involved. But that it's really about how do we come outside the four walls of our institutions and be in community and be walking with people. And so that actually requires a lot of self-reflection and, it's figuring it out together, right? And so I have this quote that I think it was John Paul II said that no one is too poor to give and too rich to receive. And so I must say that one thing that I love about leaders at Sacramento Act is that being humble enough to know that sometimes we just don't know. And especially when it came in the last few years, putting race at the center of our work. Doesn't mean that, okay, well, as a Latina woman, I don't have a place here, or as a white person, I don't have a place, but that we will wrestle together, right? And sometimes we're going to fumble, but part of it is sitting in that tension because we are in deep enough relationship with one another, right? And it is exhausting. Right? It is exhausting, and it's not going to take a book for me to figure it out. And but that at the end of the day, people want to know that they're not alone. And so I just want to say that when I say that this work has brought me closer to God, it is not an understatement. I could have continued as other people in my family where I just go to church whenever there's a big party, right? And get fancy. And, I'm Catholic. I could just ask for forgiveness and move on, right? But no, it's really about, and while my identity is very Catholic in nature, that I can feel at home coming and celebrating service with you all or with our Jewish brothers or at the mosque, because I know that at the end of the day, we all are working to be better servants and to serve others. And that, to me, there is no other job where you get to do that and, build families. So for that, I'm very thankful. Yes, Regina.
So first, I want to thank to be able to get that work done, and I remember the first project that act engagement with had me asking last time, and I just wanted to really close as family in a way of everybody asking about
Yeah. 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 So for those of you that didn't hear, the question from Ms. Regina is around is there a city plan for how to address now that, for a while they were suspending the bills for water and et cetera, but now people are going to have to pay for it and it puts a lien on the house. And so I don't think there's a plan from the city. And I don't think we need to wait for the city to come up with the plan, because I think that is the beautiful part about knowing that community organizing works. We know it, right? We have a list of wins, and that's, even though we have a long list of wins, we're still not where we need to be, because we're still bleeding people. People are still in pain, right? And I was in a meeting with a board of supervisors recently from Art and Arcade, Desmond. Well, he didn't attend the meeting, but his chief of staff was. And the clergy were raising concerns about the fact that, folks are starting to receive eviction notices because they haven't been able to catch up with the rent for the last year and a half. And so at the end of the meeting, the clergy were not very happy with the answers they got in that meeting. And because one of the things they lift up is we want to welcome our new neighbors, because we know we have a lot of families from Afghanistan that are going to come to our community, and we want to welcome them. And what we are predicting is that there will be animosity from some members of our community who are currently getting displaced at, nobody else's problem other than we already had a housing issue. I don't know that elected officials right now are thinking about that. Like the feeling that people may have, regardless of whether they're right or not, it's a feeling, right? And so we don't want to generate hate. We want to welcome folks. And so the clergy said to me at the end of the meeting when we were debriefing, they said, Gabby, it doesn't matter that I really care about police accountability. I think we need to put everything down and address housing, because I'm hearing more and more about that. And so that's a long way to answer your question. I don't think the city or the county have a plan, like a long-term plan and a short-term plan, because, there's things are happening right now. And so that we as Sacramento Act will start spending a lot more time in our housing fight, because I think there's opportunities to help both come up with solutions. And there's been congregations at the AME Church Zion up in North Highlands. The church pre-COVID had said, Gabby, we have land, we have an aging congregation. How do we build affordable housing on our property? It's like, Reverend Rajiv, Reverend Grizel, that's a wonderful idea. Let's figure it out. And then, of course, we had to stop everything. And so now I think we have to start being more creative about how to address the housing and the economic impact of the pandemic. Although, I think we're just going to have to try new things. And so thank you for lifting up the utilities piece, because we can definitely keep that as something to touch on as we're having these meetings. Anybody else? And I'll close with this. I hope that you all are as proud, not just of your faith leaders, right, but of each other. Because when we have asked you that your presence mattered, you showed up in one way or another. I got emails from some of you saying, like, Gabby, I can't be at the supervisor meeting, but I send my comment. Those things matter, right? When there was a belong circle, you showed up, right? When just like over and over again, I have experienced your congregation to not just be, welcoming, but actually active participants of what it means and what it looks like to walk with others. And so I just want to really thank you for your generosity, because I know when we did the rental assistance a year ago, you all would call me and say, hey, I don't need my stimulus. Can we give it out? Like, that takes a community that deeply cares about others. And, on behalf of all the people that we work with, I just want to say thank you. And I really hope that you are as proud of each other as we are proud to say that Parkside is a member of Sacramento Act. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you so much. That was very informative and very inspirational. And SAC Act is really a great organization. It's one of the most effective ways that Parkside works for social justice is through SAC Act. And if you want to find out even more about them, just go to their website, sacact.org, right? It's org, not com. And I also want to thank all of you for coming and sitting here. And I want to thank Leslie's team that worked all day yesterday to put the sandwiches and the boxes together. Thank you so much. So, like Trent says, this is the kickoff event to the pledge drive. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So last week I was driving along and I was trying to figure out what I was going to say today. And the lane next to me, a car pulled up with the most unusual bumper sticker. Do you remember when you used to, everywhere you went, you'd see bumper stickers that said, honk if you love Jesus? Well, this one was a little bit different. This one said, Tithe if you love Jesus. Anyone can honk. Okay, well, that was kind of interesting. Tithing is an interesting concept, but there's nothing magical about 10%. If you're living on Social Security, it's just not going to happen. But for other people, 10% is a trifle. They should probably be given a lot more. But the bumper sticker was right about one thing. Anybody can honk. And we know people who claim to be Christians who just honk, 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 honk all the time. And I don't think we want to be like that. I think we want to know that our time, our lives, and our money are going for things that make life better for a lot of people. And Parkside works for good. Absolutely. I am so proud to be a part of this church. We do so many good things, and we keep each other informed and motivated so that we do things as individuals that we might not do if we weren't part of Parkside. So we don't want to honk, right? No honking, no honking. So I am not afraid to ask for money. And I will be asking you for money. And so will a lot of other people. You're going to be hearing as the campaign goes on from a lot of other Parksiders. You're going to hear from the discipleship team. You're going to hear from Reverend Bonnie, Reverend Rajiv. We're going to be asking you to give. And I hope that you're going to join in with us as we say, I hope you will join me in giving to Parkside. Can you say that with me? I hope you will join with me in giving to Parkside. That was very weak. I hope you will join with me in giving to Parkside. You will hear that over and over. You will get snail mail. You will get email. You will get information in the Friday newsletters. We are going to talk about money. But what's the purpose? Here's the purpose. The purpose is for each individual or family, we call those giving units, for each individual or family to pledge to sacrificially give to Parkside for 2022. Okay, sacrificially. And you'll be able to pledge online. You'll be able to pledge paper. We'll take your pledge anyway. You can bring it up and hand it to me now if you want. We'll take your pledge any way that we can get it. But we want you to pledge. And what's the goal? Well, it depends. One goal, if we raise $230,000, that's a little less than we did last year. If we raise $230,000, we can keep doing things the way that we have been. And that's okay. That's good. We're doing good work and things are going well. But if we want to maybe give raises to our creative, talented, hardworking, industrious staff, or if we want to increase staffing so that we can be more creative and more faithful, or if we want to do some much needed repairs around here, or if we want to add programming for children, for teenagers, for the post-teenagers here, if we want to do those things, then we're going to need some more money. So while I'm saying our goal is $230,000, it's really $240,000. So that's just so you know. So I'm asking you to think about this. I'm asking you to pray about this. I'm asking you to redesign your budget around this year so that you can make a sacrificial pledge to Parkside. And we would like for you to do it by November the 14th. Okay? Okay? Okay. Michael, you're back on. Oh, okay. Okay, questions. So Paul's not here, so we can't answer questions about how it's spent. This is about how we're raising it. Or what it might be for. Questions? Okay. If you are an elected leader of Parkside, we would like you to get your pledges in by November the 26th. October the 26th. We want to show everybody that our leaders who write the agenda are also joining in and underwriting the agenda. So if you're an elected leader, we would like your pledge by the 26th so that we can announce to the congregation on the 31st that all the elected leaders have pledged. Is that what you meant? Okay. Any other questions? Tammy. Good question. Technically, it starts in January, but you can start now. Yeah, technically it runs 1st of January through the end of December. Any other questions? I think that's something that everybody has. I think you should give enough that you have to give up something else that you really want. I think that's sacrificial. Maybe it's a vacation. Maybe you don't buy that new car this year. You put it off for a year. But you do something that you give up something that's really important to you so that you can give at a level that is appropriate for the way that God has blessed you. Any other questions? The council asked, we went to the council, the discipleship team went to the council and said, how much do you want us to raise? The old stewardship team committee used to set the goal that we could raise. I don't even know how that happened. It was so crazy. But so now the council sets it, and that's appropriate. So we went to the council, the team, and said, we need a figure. You know, we're starting this campaign. How much do you want us to raise? And they said 230,000. But we decided that we would like to do more than just get by. So, but I mean, you vote with your checkbooks and your credit cards and however you vote. So I guess we'll find out. You're welcome. Any more questions? Okay. Okay, Bonnie and Rajiv are next.
Huge thank you to the discipleship team. Yes. For getting this kickoff. They've been meeting weekly, I think, for the last couple months, planning so that we'd have all the details covered for today. And it's turned out beautifully, and the weather cooperated, so it was wonderful. So, you know, I could talk about all of the wonderful things that Parkside has been to each of us. I could talk about our history. I could talk about youth mission and service trips. I could talk about this new young adult group that's forming and how they're growing. I could talk about how we thrived through the pandemic and how we added membership to our church through the pandemic. I could talk about the technology that we now have so that even if you're at home, you can be at church every single Sunday, live in community with the people that you love. So I could talk about all of that. But truly, what Parkside means to me and why I think pledging at Parkside is extremely important. And Rajiv and I will be looking over our finances, and we won't be honking, but we will be looking to see how we can give sacrificially to Parkside. But what Parkside means to me is when I saw Evelyn, who was a pandemic baby, we blessed her baptism Many of you were there during the pandemic, and now she's walking. And she was running around the grass, and she would just run up to random people with her arms open. I knew that every single person here that Evelyn ran up to would greet her with open arms, with a smile, and with this commitment to, from your birthing breath to your dying breath, you are part of this Christian family, a family of God, we like to say, and I'm with you in that. I mean, that in 2021 is unfortunately less and less common, that kind of community. And to continue to hold the kinds of values that we hold as a progressive Christian faith community, raising children, raising teenagers, accompanying folks in their elder years, while we're out there protesting for justice for people halfway around the world. That's where I want my money to go, is to a community like that. My son, Nick, he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but yesterday we were talking about this pledge drive, and he works on Sundays, so he's not here. And even if he didn't work, I don't know if he would be here. But what he said is, Mom, if I won the lottery, I would just give all that money to Parkside, because I know that it would be well spent there. I wouldn't have any qualms about how that money was being used. So be like Nick.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to follow that up. I do want to thank Becky. I want to thank you in particular in this moment for sharing the history that you lived and observed here at Parkside, and in partnership with you is Margaret Brown, who's not here today, but was with your words just as Bonnie was with my words in the sermon. And I think the point that I want to lift up, it actually occurred to me to mention Evelyn in this construct is, I know you and Margaret, and I know some of the other elders in this church who have made Parkside possible, who have lifted it and sustained it through hard times. And one of the fears about church is the elders are trying to make their young people conform into a mold that the elders have set. That's not Parkside. Not one person here is thinking, I'm going to give to Parkside so Evelyn can turn out just like me. We're giving to Parkside so we can be the kind of Christian spiritual community that is rooted, and our children grow up to be who they can possibly be, with the full support of church cousins, church uncles, aunties, church grandmas and grandpas, so that Evelyn and all of our kids can be who they can possibly be with communal support. And this is statistically borne out. Young people that grow up with supportive community in some form, oftentimes it is in a spiritual community structure, they tend to do better. They suffer less long term, and they flourish better long term. It's not just a Christian thing or a Jewish or a Muslim thing, but this type of community has lasting and real impacts. So while we're thinking about 2022, I say, I think about Brother Craig Womack, who is Muskogee. And in that tradition, they think generations down the road. So your giving isn't just about 2022. It's about the generations beyond what we can imagine. And I'm just grateful to be in this work with you at Parkside, because you get that. You actually get that. We're not about conformity. We're about flourishing. And we know people are going to look different as life moves on. So thank you all. I don't know, Michael, is there a closing? Leslie, yes.
Thank you, Bonnie and Rajiv. This placemat that was in your lunch, it didn't get laminated, so you might have spilled on it. Don't worry, you'll see lots more of these. not really effective as a napkin or a placemat, but we will put this in front of you early and often for the next 4 weeks. We welcome everybody's participation in this pledge drive. We thank you for being here today. We have excess lunch since we had quite a few RSVPs, so please take those along, have lunch tomorrow, or give it to a family or a friend or a neighbor who would like a free meal. And you'll be hearing from us weekly for the next 4 weeks, and we look forward to this journey together. Thanks for being here.